I was gonna I was gonna bring this up because this is how we actually started talking initially. Um,
Yeah,
have
Nathaniel
you
Down.
read this at all yet?
I haven't no, but I knew about him, and then I did a little bit more digging into it, and it was like that was a really smart guy. Like just the things that like the math and the science and everything that he pioneered is just really wild, which is cool. I wish I was half as smart as that guy.
I see you're running Kalnara Cyber Defense. Do I have that right?
You do, yes.
Okay, and before that you had another company that you ran. How did you even get into cyber?
So it was kind of interesting. So I started off. Well, I started off with doing a help desk job, doing internet support for hotels, um, and that was kind of fun until it wasn't. And then I moved into the voice over IP world and learned all about the wonderful world of interoperability. Took on more networking kind of work there, and slowly just made my way up in the networking side. And a lot of times, networking ends up being the de facto security resource in a lot of companies, running firewalls and web filters and whatnot. Um, so I just more and more got involved in security, and then finally said, "Hey, I kind of like this. It's kind of fun being paranoid and picking things apart." So um, I really just dove in, learned more and more about it, and finally I said, "Hey, why don't I go and try and get my CISSP?" And so I did that, and started Kalnara Cyber Defense, and the rest, as they say, is history. Just there was a time that I had a business called RTFM Solutions, um,
Does that
and
mean what I think it means?
it sure does. Yeah, read the frickin' menu. Manual. And yeah, we our tagline was "It's what we do."
So what RTFM was that mostly IT support?
Yeah, there's a lot of networking. I tried
Okay.
to branch into one of the things I tried to pioneer was like hardware as a service. So businesses, instead of going out and spending $30 or $40,000 on a bunch of network gear, I would work with them or try to work with them and go source a vendor that would be willing to sell me the equipment, and then I would essentially rent it to the company, and we'd manage it all for them. Um,
Nice.
as a lot of things I seem to get myself into, I was at the forefront before that was really a thing. And everyone said, "Why would I want to pay rent for equipment when I can buy my own equipment?" And here we are now with cloud everything, and everyone is just renting someone else's hardware, and it's eh, I learned my lesson. Don't be too creative because I'm too far ahead of the game.
Hilarious.
But yeah, it was fun, and I learned a lot doing that, and took those learnings and brought them to Kalnara, and now just trying to learn more and grow and help people out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you
So
mentioned learning there, and learning in cybersecurity is kind of a weird thing because I mean, if you look at a graphic that has all of the aspects of security and all of the tools and all of the parts of a business that security touches, it's really broad. Um,
it is, yes.
how do you learn and stay up to date to where you know about all of those things and know that you're actually covering the whole field?
So I've learned that it's impossible. There's just no way to keep up with all of that. So, but a lot of things with cybersecurity, they really come back down to just some fundamentals. Why are we doing this? How could this go wrong? Do we really need this? What does this do for the business? And just asking some very basic, pointed questions. There's a technique, 5 whys. If you can't answer, why 5 times to get to, really to the crux of it, you probably don't have a good enough understanding about what is going on. So that's really, instead of trying to keep up to date on everything, it's just be critical, just think about it, and then just there's always great ways. I've got a bunch of RSS feeds, and there's podcasts that I keep up with, and I've got a whole bunch of books behind me that I intend to read one day. Um, and it's good to just get a passing knowledge about certain topics, and I think the key is for a lot of people, they need to decide what they want to do. Do they want to specialize? And for me, I chose the the more generalist route because I like talking to everyone and I like knowing a little bit about everything and being able to understand this is where there is something to worry about, but let's go bring in an expert who really understands the field. So if you need to do a penetration test, we can bring someone in that knows penetration tests that start to finish, top to bottom. Doing social engineering if you want to test to see how your staff perform. Hire a social engineer that actually really understands what they're doing. And there are some crazy, crazy smart guys out there. Christopher Hadnagy's got a couple of books that he wrote, and they're just mind blowing what you can learn from that. So, um, yeah, I guess to answer your question, I just I gave up trying to know everything and just accepted that be curious and ask questions, and that's really the best way to understand something.
That's great. Yeah, I'm on the sales side at a vendor. Um, and a lot of the sales process is a lot of the same. Ask questions, be critical, really try and understand the purpose of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and even on the cybersecurity sales side, it's multiplied. The usual kind of sales process is you ask questions, you let people talk, and you discuss what their needs are, what they're thinking, and just see how you can help them out. And then on the cybersecurity side, then you go even further down that rabbit hole of you need to know what questions you need to ask to elicit that response from someone and really dive into what they're looking for and what they actually need. And there's a lot of magazines out there. There's a lot of articles, news stories about the things that have gone on, and everyone needs this, everyone needs that. And then you get down to this: how do we get someone from I read about this and I need to get to here with them because this is what they actually need, but they're convinced that this is what they need because they read a magazine and they saw a shiny piece of paper that said this is going to solve all your woes. I'm not going to name and shame a few vendors, but there are a few out there that think that they fix everything.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually see
Yeah.
that a
Right.
lot. They'll read something and essentially they build a shopping list and go on a shopping spree for tools.
Yeah.
Um, and they feel like that will solve their problems. It's almost like back in the day when you'd go to Best Buy and you'd pick up Roller Coaster Tycoon and Norton and you'd pick up all of the DVDs to install that you need and then you'd come home and install all of them and then you're set, right? Um,
Exactly. Just don't forget to hire that guy that goes around your amusement park and has the mop and bucket and cleans
yeah,
up all the spills.
we want the vomit on the walkways.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Too
mean, you're
funny.
talking with small businesses a lot. They come to you with requests like, can you fill these, can you fill our cart with these DVDs? How do you help them balance that and like help them understand like, well, let's look at your policies and your processes and, you know, figure out how you handle invoices and accounting, all of these things. Like, how do you help them make that shift?
It's a it's a challenge because to start with, there a lot of times you're talking with someone whose focus is their business. Much like me, I'm worried about my business. How do I grow my business? How do I find new clients? How do I keep my staff happy? All of these things. And they have no real concept of what they need to be worried about. And so and there are some people that do they've got that understanding, but um, generally it's they've heard about a friend's company or someone that they know through their network, or they read about something, um, and they'll come in with, like you said, that shopping list. And I find it's really just sit down and understand what they're worried about, what they're concerned with, because at the end of the day, you can spend. I mean, there's Fortune 500 companies, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and they have security incidents, they have data breaches, they have compromises because uh, at the end of the day, there is no perfectly secure. It's be as good as you can be. And one thing I tell everyone is there is a lure, there is a phishing email that will get any of us on the exact right day at the exact right moment, or wrong day at the wrong moment, if you will, where you're gonna get got. I've had emails come in and you see them and you look at it and you just don't even think that this might be something that's malicious at that very moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I try to take more of a collaborative approach and really understand what they're looking for, what their concerns are, because I can sell someone till I'm blue in the face, but if they don't buy into what value it brings, really there's not much that we can do. Um, and I find my underlying kind of ethos when it comes to selling is, um, do better today than you did yesterday, and you're moving in the right direction. Cybersecurity, it's a continuum. There is no end date. There is no finality in it. It's not like you're working to finish that hike and you get around the mountain and there you go, you take off your hiking shoes and you go home and you have a cold one and you're happy. It's you're continually working on it, and what was the right tool for you yesterday may not be the right tool for you to today, today. So really just, yeah, just kind of working with people to understand what they're worried about and helping to guide them towards the basics. And I hate to say the word basics because that sounds very patronizing, but really, there's three things. If you stop someone from sending you a malicious email with email security, great. You've protected probably the number one threat vector that you're going to experience. The next thing you want to do is make sure that internet traffic is safe. So some kind of web filtering technology so that someone doesn't inadvertently click on a link that does get through, or they don't happen to browse to a malicious website or a website that has, malvertising or anything like that. And then your endpoint security, which is really just, if it gets through your email security, it gets through your web security, please let's hope that our endpoint detection and response or similar technology is going to catch and stop it. And at the very least, does it offer us some kind of insight to give us the ability to roll back the changes? Can we recover from it in some way? Just something that gives you that, it's really the backstop. Think of it like the batter didn't hit it, the catcher didn't catch it, didn't beam the umpire, but we got the backstop, so no one's chasing it down a gopher hole. So really, those are the big ones, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I historically I have strived for perfection. Like back when I was a SOC analyst, I was like, I don't want any false positives or false negatives. But now that I look back on my experience, I realize that's almost an enemy to good security because you need to be, it's not perfect. There's no perfection at all. Um,
Yeah.
and so if you're able to become aware, understand that there will be faults and you need to be aware of those. There's a guy I follow on LinkedIn. His name's Brent. He made a LinkedIn post the other week. He was like, "We got a free red team engagement," and he was joking because it was a threat actor trying to hit them. But because they structured their defenses in a way where it didn't result in material incidents, like if you can use it to improve your detection and improve your defenses, like that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, and I think a lot of organizations forget this, and in the security industry, it's become really easy for us to, chase after that, chase the rabbit, if you will. And realistically, we need to just get back to the basics on that. And like Brent was posting about there, you know, things are built right, and we got a free red team engagement out of it. Threat hunt, but it's really just bringing it back down to you know chase what you can chase, find what you can find, learn what you can learn, because there's always something to learn. And if someone does make a mistake and they do click on something that is malicious, take that opportunity not to look at that person and to browbeat them or to berate them or to humiliate them or anything like that. But it's a great opportunity to educate them, and alongside educating them, educate yourself. How did that? And this is where it comes back to those very fundamental questions. How did this happen? How did they manage to circumvent that control? Um, I've seen tools where they're supposed to stop absolutely everything. The world will be fine in a wonderful, nirvanic place. If we just install this one tool, it'll fix it all. But it really doesn't. And we ended up finding out that there was just the ever so infinitesimally small window between one action and the other when the tool was loading up, that you could bypass the tool. And so you would be able to, bypass the web protection for one example. Uh, if you opened your browser before a plugin loaded and before something established a connection, and if there was something cached already from, when they were doing something else, and I can't even remember the exact series of events, but it was just this tiny little situation where someone could get through, and you go, oh, how do you handle a browser's loading sequence? If a browser chooses to load plugins after rendering the first painted content, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. So that's one of those situations where you have to accept that, okay, this particular tool has its limitations. We can't protect from everything. So defense in depth comes into play. That's when you have your endpoint detection and response tools, you have your firewalls, you have, your web filters, your proxy, whatever the technology stack that is most appropriate for that organization is. But just take that. How did they manage to do that and figure it out? Because then that's how you're going to improve your security in a meaningful way. It's not chasing a new tool. It's really figuring out what went wrong and how do we prevent it from going wrong in the future, or put a compensating control in place so that when the inevitable happens, the next time that someone does manage to trigger that, tiny little sequence of events, that you're still able to protect them. Um, and so in this one, it was, let's do a tabletop exercise. Let's make sure that if something bad happens, if one of our tools flags something and something smells funny to someone, that everyone knows what to do. And when it gets bad, when it starts to go really bad, what do we do? Whose job is what? And just practicing it so it's muscle memory, so that you're not, it's kind of like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're half blind and you can't really see what you're doing and you're trying to get a glass of water. How do you avoid ramming a hip bone into that counter? Well, it's muscle memory. Deep inside, just it's 10 steps to the right and turn left, and it's 3 steps forward, and then you just fumble until you feel the handle of the refrigerator and you open it up, and then you're blinded by the light. Well, that's really what it comes down to, is just practicing that and understanding. So the companies that have their own IT staff, they've got their own challenges, and it's a very different set of challenges. And then the smaller companies that don't have their own in-house IT, they might use an MSP, they might use, a nephew or an uncle or a brother or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, they're almost slightly disadvantaged in that case, because you're not big enough to have the resources to hire the experts that are going to be able to properly set up things for you in the first place. They're there to help you get up and going. They're saying, hey, I'm going to throw you a bone. I'm going to work with you and make sure that, yeah, your email's working and we've set up a firewall for you or a router or something like that. But they're not thinking security. They're not thinking about what could go wrong. So one of the common things I see in that scenario is, they put in a little Soho grade, firewall, router, whatever you want to call it. And they leave the administration turned wide open, or they're not restricting any outbound traffic. And so someone gets something on their computer and suddenly it starts emailing out, or, they are now, being used as part of a botnet. Um, and it's always a challenge working with those smaller kind of businesses, because inherently they trust the people that they know and who set that up for them. And I'm a big believer in, you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. But a lot of times people are reluctant to admit where the bounds of their knowledge are, and so they will insist that they know everything and that they know what they're doing and that things are secure and set up properly, when really they aren't. So that becomes a bit of a challenge to helping those kinds of organizations. Um, and then the kind of the middle ground is when you've got your IT companies, your managed service providers in there, their core focus is really, how do we keep this organization online? How do we keep them working? How do we keep them functioning? We want to reduce friction. We don't want to be getting, hundreds of support tickets a day, because the users are going to be unhappy about that. And it's going to be all sorts of friction. Um, but realistically, that is the most key time that you want to make sure that you're injecting security into that process, because if they're not thinking about security, and a good example is email security. Everyone's gotten a quarantine notification. Everyone's gone and looked at that and they go, I'm pretty sure I was expecting that email. I know who's sending that to me. And so they click the request email or release or restore or whatever you want to call it. And the the analyst gets that ticket on the help desk and they look at it and they go, yeah, here you go. There's the email. Tickets complete, close it off. Unfortunately, they just released a phishing email, and now that user goes and they click on that link. And because everything is meant to be smooth and seamless and really easy to use, and it's really hard. I will be honest, it is really difficult for people to be able to identify these things. Just this morning, I found some phishing emails at a client that were using Canva as a way to bypass the security tooling. It would go to a Canva link, and that Canva link had a hosted PDF, and that PDF was basically just a picture of the company's website. Is all it was, and they just very crudely whited out most of the page and some very basic, Times New Roman text on there to submit a document. Um, Easy to fall for because
Huh.
it looks like a legitimate service, and they think, hey, submit a bid, request information, do any one of these things. And there's absolutely no way that you can expect the end users in that case to identify that, because that's 3-4 clicks down the line for them. um, and how do you ask a level one help desk analyst to be able to go through and perform that level of analytics, to go through, walk through that, why is it saying this but taking them there, and then having the ability to use some kind of tool that's able to detonate those links and is able to safely browse to that site and see what exactly is going on. And so it's kind of it's this, it's almost a diametrically opposed set of goals. Security and managed service providers, they want two different things. I want people to be secure. I'm okay with a little bit of friction just to help make sure that we slow things down just enough that we're catching those potential incidents, but not so much that no one can do what they're trying to do. And the flip side of that is the IT businesses. They want everything just to work because it's all about cost. It's all about how many tickets can we support, how easy can we make this, because the more that our clients love us, the more they're going to tell their friends, and the more business we're going to have, and the greater things are going to be. So it's just finding those ways to work together and inject enough security for the size of the organization, and realistically, everyone's a target for the same things. The same emails you see going to a 5,000 person company are the same emails you see going to a 5-person company. Um,
Mm.
I get the same emails that some of my oil and gas clients get. It is what it is. The bad guys don't care. Their only care is that you might have money, you might have something of value, and so if we can trick you, yeah, sure, they will target bigger companies. They will look for companies that have insurance coverage, but realistically, it's a numbers game. Let's get this piece of malware into as many systems as we can, and let's see who we can get.
You brought up the tabletop exercises, and that's kind of an interesting thought on user education because so many people have very differing opinions on user education. I know people that run restaurants or, small shops, things like that. Their business looks a lot like a home user essentially. It's a lot of times personal emails, Soho routers, stuff like that. Um, where do you see training helping there? Like, do you go in and do tabletops with them? Like,
Yeah, it's that's a really great point, and it's it's really tough. I'll use an example. My dad, he just retired from running his business. He did promotional products. He would have to send and receive emails with businesses all over Canada, in the United States. Um, he would be getting all sorts of emails. His email address is on every single mailing list that's ever been known to mankind, I'm sure. And that's just part of running a small business, like you say. Um, there, Unfortunately, there is not a lot for those super super small businesses, because it's the economies of scale, right? The companies that put out the tools that do the protection, they're focused on Fortune 500. They're looking at the 1,000 seat companies, the multi-billion-dollar companies. They want to sell their tool to as many people as they can, as fast as they can,
Yep.
probably using venture capital and trying to build their book and just get out and make as much money as they can, which is a whole other topic in the security industry right now. Um, with fly-by-night tools that don't actually do what they say they do. Um, PSA, make sure that their tool is good and they've been around for a while and they're planning to be around for a while. Uh, but so so what I've been looking at doing is how do we help these small businesses? And one of the things is really just sharing knowledge, making them aware of things. And I guess at the end of the day, if if a small business with 3 computers has an incident and they lose their data because their computers have ransomware or whatever on there, what is the impact to that business? And what are the solutions? So what are we really worried about when you're talking, I'll use my dad's business, for example. My dad and my brother, we're both working in it. If one of them lost their computer or both of them lost their computer, whether it's even just through the old kind of the big three: fire, flood, and theft.
Mm-hmm.
Computers do not like to get too hot, they don't like to get very wet, and they don't like to be taken by people that they don't know. um, so what can you do? And in those cases, for a small, like a super small business, that micro business, that family run restaurant, it's really about just make sure that you've got a good copy of your data backed up. If you've got family recipes that have been in the family for generations and you've digitized them and there's no more hard copy of that, it can be as simple as a small little external hard drive that once a week you plug into that computer and you just drag and drop all the important things that you have on there. I do it. I've got, sitting right behind me in the cupboard there is a little SSD drive that I plug in once a week and I just copy everything over off of my file share. And that is my holy crap copy. And it's, if I have to go and recover for something from that, I've had a really bad time. Now I use tools that back up my data to the cloud and it syncs to my laptop and there's multiple copies that I've
Mm-hmm.
got stored. But at the end of the day, if I get hit with ransomware, chances are they're probably going to be able to encrypt, my file share. They may be able to get it if they get onto my computer. They may have access to my passwords. They may have access to, the application I use to store those files up in the cloud. So if they can somehow impact that, and it may not be deleting it, it might be encrypting the files. It might just be as simple as changing the password on the account if they get in there, and then taking ownership of the account, making it impossible for you to recover it. There's some DNS providers now. If you lose your login and your MFA credentials, and you don't have your secret code, that super long string of random characters that they say, make sure you write this down. It says, one of them here in Canada, hover.com, they say you may be required to submit an affidavit to get access again. So there may be steps that you can take to get your access back, but is it reasonable? Are you going to be out of business by then? So it really comes down to what is it that you're worried about? What are you trying to protect? Because generally, an adversary in a restaurant scenario, they're not going after the kitchen because there's nothing in the kitchen that they can get to. And unless you've gone down the route and you've put smart appliances in there, and here's another PSA on my soapbox. Please, for the love of all that is good and holy, do not buy smart appliances. You
Yes.
don't want someone turning your oven on from the other side of the planet when you're not there. Please don't buy smart appliances.
You talked about what are you really protecting when you're with a small business, and I was looking at a family-run restaurant that has a website that's hosted on some random server. It's like terrible, terrible security. It's a nasty website. And I was like, I have to tell them that something's wrong. And then I was like, whoa. It took me months to figure this out. But I was like, why do they care about the website? Well, they probably don't. Like, what do they actually want it to do? Well, they want it to be alive and available. They want it to be available and they don't want it to change. That's all they care about. Like, they don't care about if somebody hacks into that random server. Like, Nobody cares. And what is it going to do to their business? Nothing really. They'll spin up a new website.
And that's, you just absolutely nailed probably, the biggest problem in cybersecurity, which is, what does this actually mean? What does this actually matter to us? Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to worry about, you know um, this one particular piece of technology that's sitting on the internet? It's not connected to anything. Um, you know, a Bluetooth temperature sensor. Yes, someone could walk up within however many feet of that Bluetooth device, and they could potentially put some malware on there, and they could potentially then infect your phone or something like that. But really, it comes down to, what are you worried about? What are we trying to protect? Is there any value to the company? Is this something that we can reasonably expect to have a material impact on the business? And with your example about the website, you're right. The worst that happens is someone puts something awful, graphic,
Yep,
pornographic,
totally.
whatever, awful things that people tend to put on these websites when they deface them. And is that going to cause enough reputational harm to that business for them to justify spending their very precious limited funds to protect? Because at the end of the day, most restaurants, especially the mom and pop shops, the family run ones, they're running on razor thin margins.
100%.
They, day to day, it's it's tough for them. And that's why I don't really push a lot of security on really small businesses. It's more of a, what kind of information can you share with them that might help them out, that might prevent them from having something that is meaningful to them. Um, one of the A great example is, there's a donair shop not far from my house. Absolutely love those guys. They make some great food. They're all super nice people there, and their internet went out. They couldn't process any transactions that weren't cash. So what do you do? And that's an example of a risk to a business. And people
Yep.
think about that and they go, well, that's an IT problem. And really, with security, we're dealing with the confidentiality, the availability, and the integrity. Availability. We need this system to be up and running. We need to be able to sell to people. And there were people that had placed orders, and, well, I don't have any cash. Who carries cash anymore? So thankfully, that business was smart, and they said, hey, here is, we can do an email money transfer, and you can send us a payment for it that way. And they were more or less taking it on good faith that people were sending money in. But that's risky as well. So what did they stand to lose on that one day from having their internet out? And if their internet was out, what do they, what, I guess, what does their staff cost them? What does all of that food cost them that they've heated up, that they've prepared, that really can't be kept for another day because it's cooked up, it's been just bordering that safe zone all day long. um, you know what are they, what are their operating costs in terms of just keeping the lights on? What are they paying for rent that day? They may have a $5,000 a day just carrying costs just for having that alone. Um, and a business decision that was made was, we're not going to spend an extra $50 a month on a backup internet connection because that's too much money. But it comes down to, maybe their profit margins are $25 a day. Maybe they make $5,025 a day, and their costs are $5,000. So that $50 was too much for them.
Yep.
It's a risk decision. Um, but was that $50, a month for that extra connection, worth it at the end of the day, when they consider that, hey, we just lost all of this money?
Totally. Cool, man. Well, thanks for your time today.